Welcome to HRA Geopolitics. My dear followers, today I have a nice, important guest. My dear friend Luit is with us. You remember him from a previous video where we have talked about the India-Pakistan tensions. He is covering for a long time the Indian perspective in foreign policy. He is very close to the Chinese economy and especially the Asian political perspective. And we're changing very often privately, actually, our ideas, how we can move these both areas, especially Asia and Eurasia, together, putting the tensions by side and looking for a better future like the European Union or like the Western Hemisphere did it for 100 years. Of course, it's a very difficult issue. It needs time, it needs education, it needs to uplift millions and millions of people to the upper middle class. It is a task, it's an important, difficult task in India. It is an important, difficult task in Turkey and many other nations here in Asia. Today, I was thinking about, Luit, to cover a bit India-Türkiye relations and the perspective in some tensions around the world, how these both countries look towards these tensions. And I would like to learn from you the Indian perspective, and you can ask me about the Turkish perspective. Welcome, first of all, Luit.
Thank you so much, Harun. And let's hope we will have a very fruitful discussion today.
I think if you can adjust the sound a bit more, the volume, because I think it's a bit low.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, now it's somehow better. So
okay,
thank you very much for joining in the conversation. I think we both are one of the least persons in our respective countries who actually have an interest to learn the other part. Let's say you are discovering Turkey for a long time, and I have lived there for very long. We had long conversations. We came around in India, and I have learned the basics, especially the depth of the Indian politics, etc. Sometimes we're joking about it, but I think let's start from the Turkish perspective, if I'm speaking. As you know, after the India-Pakistan tensions, again, an anger rise up, understandable because of the terror attack, what happened again in Kashmir. And after that, the blaming part started, like always, Pakistan to India, India to Pakistan. And especially in these tension times, there is a high emotion on both sides. And the emotion in India, I see, especially since 2018, I remember when the Turkish president came up with a speech on the United Nations where he has mentioned, along with Palestine, also Kashmir. The first time the focus in the Indian narrative came, wait, what is happening? Why Turkey is saying this? Why they are our enemies? And we have to fight back and let's make a boycott. And since then, 2018, 19, 20, I remember every year something, similar came up when, if you remember, Amir Khan came to visit to Turkey. The first lady, he has visited to that time, and everyone called him an anti-national. And then, different things happened. But after the earthquake, not the earthquake, I remember during the pandemic, the first approach was made with Turkey sending some military cargo planes, if you remember, with vaccines and the electronic equipment, etc. And then I think 2 years later, when this horrendous earthquake happened in Turkey, India started this with Operation Dost, if I remember well, where they can help. So the Indian narrative, of course, the people saying, why you are selling weapons to Pakistan? Pakistan is a terrorist state, etc., etc. Of course, very strong wordings. So, but on the other hand, in the Turkey perspective, of course, Pakistan is a brotherly nation. It is considered like that because of the historical connections to Indian Muslims. But most people in their daily lives have not much understanding whether it's about Pakistan or India, what is happening there, not much information. So for the Indian audience, I just wanted to tell a short, way how we have arrived here, because many people are thinking that has started in 2015 or 2018 when Modi came, or the Erdogan was here in charge. But the relation with Pakistan and the soaring good relations with Pakistan, the soaring relations with India is not a new phenomenon. Maybe today in social media the information is going more fast, so people having an understanding most of the time, misunderstanding about the things. But I will just make a shortcut into history going back. India, as in this form, has not existed before 1947, and especially after the Mughal regime, the British Raj took over, and it was 300 years long, colonized in many different aspects. So when we go back, especially to the Mughal time, to the Timurids, to the Ghaznavis, these were mostly Turkic, ethnicities who came. Yeah. So one part of India, it's understandable. They see it as invasions. Other part is telling, I'm more on that side. Yes, they came as an invader, maybe from outside, but they became with time Indianized, and they have actually made the first attempts to create what we call today India or Pakistan or Bangladesh. So even to that time, there was a direct relations with the Ottoman Empire, the Silk Road. Sure. They were both sitting at the throats of the Silk Road. They were trading. They had sometimes good relations, sometimes more not good relations, like during Akbar time. But yeah, this relation was always there. And even the Muslims in India mostly are influenced from the Turkic part of Muslims, 80-90% I see there, than from the Arab part, who arrived more in the Kerala part, So this is one thing. So the relations are going far, far back, the Turkish-Indian relations. So, but after the Ottoman Empire has started to crumble, especially with the start of the Indian Muslims looking for an identity and getting rid of British, colonizations. The Ottoman Empire in its last part was a hope in the fight against the British. So even some non-Muslims like Gandhi have started to, romanticize about the Ottoman Empire, fighting against the British, even though the British Raj took also Indian soldiers to that area. But the population was more in favor to get rid of the British. So the Sultan was some kind of an example, like the Khalif of the Muslim world. So even like, important people like Gandhi also as non-Muslims also supported the Khilafat movement. So help arrived in the Ottoman Empire during the Balkan Wars, then the First World War, then during the Independence War, which also mentioned from many Indians today. We had Turkey, why they are bad with us. So the situation became, of course, a bit different when the Republic of Turkey was, created. But the love towards the Indian subcontinent from the Turkish politics was always there. So they supported, maybe they had not the strength of Ottoman Empire, but they had the interest, to diplomatically help out what is going there in their capacity. Because when I read the archives in the parliamentary sessions, I see very often that Atatürk is speaking that the British are playing these ethnicities against each other, religions against each other, and that Turkey needs to make constructive work. Well, but then the British Raj, after the British Empire, after the Second World War, had not the strength anymore, was leaving many areas, sadly with many difficult positions, like in Palestine, like in India, and many other areas. So unsolved problems. And especially with the work of the Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was more in favor to create the Muslim-dominated nation like Pakistan, because he was thinking in a past period with the Mughals, etc., ruled India. he was thinking that they had the power and the elites in their hand. But after the, democratically parliamentarian system, he was in the idea like they will be minority and this will play against them. Some people will take revenge. And of course, there was also always some part, not everywhere, but some kind of communal violence between Hindus and Muslims. So the British played also against each other. So Muhammad Ali Jinnah's vision at the end became true, even though with many bloodshed, especially during the exchange of the population. And in 1947, Pakistan and India was established. So Turkey's perspective has not changed. Immediate same day, Turkey has recognized the independence of India and Pakistan within 6 hours. So, and the ironical part, if Indians have visited, for example, parts of Turkey, especially Ankara, the capital, they will see we have Gandhi Street, they will see we have Jinnah Street, they will see we have Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Street. So normally, all of them had their beefs in history, but the Turkish perspective was everyone in the Indian subcontinent, even a part of Afghanistan, was for us friendly nations and friendly people, irrespective of the religion. And this made its way until the 70s, especially when Nehru was still alive in India as the prime minister. He gave huge efforts to get Turkey out of NATO, even towards the non-aligned movement. But of course, Turkey was still a new nation, not strong. The Cuban Missile Crisis, you remember, in the 60s, was a really dangerous time. Soviet Union danger was a big thing for Turkey. So it was not possible. But to the Indian audience, there are really interesting subjects, actually. I have written it before. You remember during the time of Quora, many Indians were excited. Oh, we didn't know this part. 1962, the Sino-Indian War, the Turkish parliament is discussing the issue for 3 days to sending ammunition to India against the Chinese, the invading Chinese. Then the American ambassador is coming and threatening, look, you are getting military help from us. You are getting aid from us, especially after the military coup in 60. Don't ever dare to make this decision real and send ammunition to India. I need to tell this because these are real stories.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, but these were favors, and I have the archives and newspaper. Maybe if I can find, I will adapt it to the video or later share. And Turkey is supporting morally. Then, when we arrive in the 71 war, when Bangladesh is separated, it was also immediately recognized from Turkey. Still, the Turkish perspective was to diplomatically solve the issue because the Turkish politics was looking at these countries as brotherly nations from the same race. So it was for us like a brother fight. So at the cost of everything we wanted to stop it. There are parliamentary speeches over there. The prime minister is trying to settle on the United Nations, etc. But then interesting something happened. 74, like you have the Kashmir issue, we have the Cyprus issue. And the 1960, after many years of fight from the population, which is over 500, 600 years, from two ethnicities, Turkish Cypriots and Cypriots. Yes, there were these fights. In the 50s, communal violence sadly started. There was a group, paramilitary group, or from the Turkish perspective, a terrorist group, EOKA called. They wanted to establish a poor Cyprus without any other ethnicity. So communal violence started. On one part, fighting against the British. On other part, these both communities were fighting against each other. Then 1960, British left also Cyprus, except the military place, which is still belonging to them.
Two air bases.
Exactly. They made a constitution, and this constitution was actually where Turkey, Greece, and the British was the guarantee state. For what they were a guarantee state in the constitution. At one point, when this island is deciding to get into any, annexed from a nation like Turkey or Greece, or they want to join any alliance, that these nations have the right to intervene and stop it. That was not allowed because there were so many tangents, nobody wanted to take the risk. But the communal violence did not stop at the 60. It went further. And the Turkish Cypriots were in the minority. And the AOK radicalism started more communal violence. Hundreds of Turkish people died. So 1964, Turkey was planning to intervene to using this guarantee right. And Johnson, the then American president, wrote a letter. It's one of the lowest points of American-Turkish relations, and threatening Turkey that they will not allow that we use the American weapons against any intervention. So that was stopped. But the violence went further until 74, when the AOKB, the following group of AOK, started to, make a collaboration with the Greek military coup that took over Greece to annex Cyprus to Greece and to depose Makarios, the then president. So Turkey intervened to stop the bloodshed from their perspective. United Nations, of course, until today do not recognize, and still the negotiations going on from both sides, but it could not solve. But at least the bloodshed was solved to that time. There was a demarcation line. But 74, interesting thing happened because India was non-aligned movement. There was no more Nehru, the smart guy, sadly. Indira Gandhi was ruling India with iron hand, and as a non-aligned movement member, stood with the Cyprus situation on the Cypriot side, and even visited, and even pushed some resolutions in the United Nations. And exactly that point, the Turkish perspective changed slowly towards Islamic perspective. And from then, we have arrived slowly to that time. Not to mention the 80 military coup in Turkey, more pro-American, and the 79 military coup in Pakistan, also more pro-American, Ziaul Haq and Kenan Evren in Turkey. That changed also the type of relations, especially in the most dangerous part of Cold War era. Of course, after 90s, India got somehow more liberal economy, etc., tried to open up. But
after the fall of Soviets.
Yeah.
After the fall of Soviets.
Exactly. And in the 2000s, it accelerated. And even Turkey tried to do more economic relations with India, etc. But always it stopped at one part because of the Pakistan issue that we have arrived now. So the things, guys, did not start just last year. So these are all perspectives coming until today. Just wanted to explain how we arrived here from the Turkish perspective. Now, Luit, sorry for making a long, so people understand it. What do you think? How we can put this emotional side on the side and try to interact these both nations in aligning to know that yes, Pakistan and Turkey has a special relations, Pakistan and Bangladesh has a special relation, etc. But we as Indians have also a special relation. We have to have these special relations. Especially, I agree with what Owaisi said for some weeks ago. He said, Turkey should not forget that also 200 Indian Muslims are on the Indian side. That is mostly forgotten on the Turkish side. So how can India advertise this side? And despite the relation with Pakistan, we can move on the economic side because we are always moving back to economic boycott. But guys, I need to also mention that the relation between India and Turkey is at $9 billion US dollars. And $7 billion US dollars from that part is you guys selling us stuff. We are one of the least countries in the Indian economic perspective where you have a huge trade surplus. So you have to think if boycott is really the right addressing these issues. I'm still thinking, like you many times told me, Luit, we need to build up a mutual economic dependency to move forward instead of boycott. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Harun, for that elaborate opening remark. Look, I think the real issue between India and Turkey relationship is mutual ignorance. Okay, both the countries, Turkey as well as India, doesn't really knows about each other very much. And let's be honest, the Mughal heritage in India remains in place, but majority of the people in India do not relate very strongly with the Mughal heritage. Okay, so that portion of India, which strongly uh, associates itself with the Mughals and the other Turkic legacy, would be Bangladesh and Pakistan, right?
Yes.
And so I can completely understand, the Turkish attitude towards Indian subcontinent as such, because you have various ethnicities coming from Central Asia, which had influence here over uh, many centuries out here, and their legacies are still out out here as such. But unfortunately, or at the current circumstance, majority of Indians cannot relate with that heritage. Because they cannot relate with that heritage, they have absolutely no idea about the historical perspective of Turkey towards Indian subcontinent as such. That is the major issue as far as I am concerned. So this can be only appreciated if more Indians can understand the history and don't focus too much on religion, which is unfortunately the impulse of majority of Indians as such right now. In our past discussions as well, I have always covered the fact that Indian state is a very new polity. It's only created in 1947. The people who were associated with the Mughals and the Mughal aristocracy and the Mughal upper class, most of them actually migrated to Pakistan and Bangladesh. So they still have a connection with I would say, the greater Turkic world as such. So they can still connect to not only Turkey, but also with Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and also, let's be very clear, Iran also has 40% Turkic population. Current, the supreme leader, Khamenei, is actually an Azeri person, which is a Turkic ethnicity.
Yes.
However, so in modern Indian state, there is very few people of the Mughal upper bureaucracy or upper aristocracy are left who could educate the state about the historical perspective of the Turkic people as such towards Indian subcontinent. So it's a huge uh, case of ignorance and the lack of education on part of the Indian polity as such, which is again is because India is a very new polity. Uh, Indian civilization, which I mean to say, if you just uh, remove the Turkic and Persian influences, the Indian civilization as such is a ahistorical civilization. We have some amount of history, but majority of Indian subcontinent, the what I should say, that the Hindu cultural background hasn't really got a very great historiography as such. So we don't have, like, you have Ibn Battuta, you have Fahian, others writing about various countries. There is no native Indian text about other cultures in other countries because you don't have any such historical memory among the non-Muslim population of India. That is a huge barrier for the Hindus of India to connect with the other people. Since you don't have a sociology and historical perspective to connect with the other people, to know how others think your about you as well as for themselves and for other issues, that ignorance leads to a emotional outburst, shall we say. So emotions come when you do not have very clear, concrete paths to guide you, right? And yeah, so whenever a lot of Indians, I would say the population as such, when they see some country is supporting Pakistan or it has pro-Pakistan, rhetoric, maybe in some international conference, that the domestic realities they tend to impose on the international reality. They think that it's a religious brotherhood. Again, that's a very ignorant perspective of people in India as such, because, as I said, this is a new state, this is a new polity, and within this culture, yes, Indian culture may be several thousand years old, but unfortunately, this culture hasn't got a very clear conception of history or geography or sociology. So that leads, you would say, in many cases, Indians would uh, jump into conclusions which are not very healthy. As far as I'm concerned, I think Indian states should take up the Turkic legacy. Okay, why only Turkic legacy? India also has Tajik legacy. So many of the
Exactly.
people in India has Iranic and Tajik heritage, right? So this can be actually used uh, to build relationship with Central Asia, with Iran, Afghanistan, right? And
Mhm.
well, when you have relations, you convert it to trade and commerce. Then actually you can have leverage on this society, on this politics, and the highest leadership body to cut any relationship as boycott are very, let's say, very infantile, impulses. Like a small kid who is not getting what he's looking for. But to repeat what I had said in our earlier interviews, India is a very new polity and it's a young population in a culture which hasn't got a very clear-headed historical perspective, even about its own neighborhood. So this ignorances led Indians to take uh, with very affordable internet and smartphone to do something which is sometimes could be very hilarious. Let's put it in that way.
So you mean actually, yeah, we have talked a lot about this situation, and I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, you are telling there were many empires, and I agree there, be it the Mughal or the last the British has colonized. Before it was the
Mhm.
Mughal, the Delhi Sultanate, and many other Indian kingdoms, etc. So, but after the nation state building, I think because it is such a diverse nation with many ethnicities and many religions and many madhabs and sects, etc., and castes, um, the people are moving from one point to another, and the state, including, cannot decide what actually is their legacy. So some part is going into history revisionism, creating something that never existed. Others are going because of religious affinity to a specific empire, but rejecting the others, and so on and so forth. So, your idea is, as I understood, because, like, for example, the Turkey is coming from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire, and
That's the one.
still standing as a state and having the archive culture, having the mindset, etc. Even when the system has changed, you're saying that when you look at this new nation of India, which is for the first time actually created like this, like we are seeing right now, is a new phenomenon, and there is no specific legacy where you can say we are the followers of Mughals, we are the followers of other one. So that is creating this problem, as I understood, right?
You're absolutely correct. Look, what happened was Mughals after the Shah of Iran, yeah,
You were
after the Shah of Iran,
you were
do you hear me
interrupted.
now?
Can you start again?
Yeah. After the Shah of Iran, Nader Shah had invaded India in around 1700s. Okay, Mughal Empire financial backbone was broken, and after that, for a brief period. large part of India actually passed from to the hands of the Marathas, the Maratha Empire.
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, the Maratha Empire was not very long lived. They also barely were able to hold Delhi for about 50 years. By early 1800s, Marathas were also defeated by the British. So what you have in India is not one constant polity which has been continuing for at least 200 or 300 years. All the polities in India are barely 200 years. Mughals, I mean, people would say it ruled for 300 years or 400 years, but actually Mughal rule started from 1556, Second Battle of Panipat, and by 1740 they were already finished. The Mughal emperor, the Shah of Mughals, was a vassal of the Marathas by 1740s. So barely 200 years. Then you have the British who started in eastern India, in Bengal. They started from about 1757, and by 1947 they were also gone. So no polity of India is has a continuity of 200 years, which means you do not have an administrative class, a stable administration. You do not have a stable record keeping culture. Okay, so these are the limitations of the Indian subcontinent. I'm not blaming an individual or any particular dynasty, but this is the historical reality of Indian subcontinent. Unlike, say, in Iran, in China, in Turkey, or in Europe, you have policies which are 400, 500, 700 years of continuity, which means you have an administrative class, you have a bureaucratic tradition, you also have a record keeping tradition where you do not mythologize, but you collect data. You collect data on your neighbors, collect data on the habits of your neighbors, you collect data on yourself. Those traditions in India are very frail, very minimal. In fact, as I said, India hasn't got traditionally, even Mughals, for example, they haven't
Mhm.
kept it. They never sent any, you know, any emissary to China or to Southeast Asia. Yes, they sent to the Shah of Iran, the Ottoman, emperor, but they have the British came in India in around 1500s, but Mughals never sent any embassy to Europe. The first person from Indian subcontinent who went to Europe was actually in around 1800s. So what you have in Indians, I'm saying as a culture, I'm giving you a bird's eye view of the cultural pattern of South Asia as such. In South Asia, you do not have long-lasting political entities, because of which you do not have a tradition of keeping empirical informations and history keeping and sociology and anthropology, which comes out because of long-lasting polity. That leads to all sort of mess in South Asia, including governance. So you cannot expect just because some individuals are very energetic, you cannot expect they are going to create a polity, a high standard polity like say Iran or Turkey or China or Europe within one generation. That doesn't happen. You need a continuity of polity. So after 47, unfortunately, I would say, a large portion of the whatever the remnant of the Mughal administrative system and the aristocracy actually migrated to what is now West Pakistan. Few also went to East Pakistan. Now they had some memories of the 1500s and 1700s, that era of relationship between India and Central Asia, Iran and Turkey. They also took that heritage with them to Pakistan, what is currently West Pakistan and Bangladesh. So Indian Union, what it formed, completely forgot that legacy and the know-how and the understanding. So India suffers from that issue. Right now, India is so highly connected with the West and especially the English-speaking countries. I would say majority of Indians would feel far more closer to America or Australia or UK than to any of the neighbors. This
Yeah,
is not only
true.
true for India. I would say this is also true for Pakistan and maybe Bangladesh. Right. So even as a result of this disconnect with your neighborhood, Pakistan has problems with all its neighbors. Do not have relationship with Afghans. They don't have good relationship with Iran. Obviously, India. Right. So similarly is the case with India. India is not able to get into a very friendly, mutually beneficial relationship with any of its neighboring countries, except maybe Bhutan. Right. So these are sociological, historical, and anthropological issues of South Asia as such. Because you do not have state tradition, I would again like to repeat, you don't have memories of how to influence other states. Cutting yourself off, is not a very smart way of handling issues. If India builds a relationship with Turkey, as we already mentioned, that actually India has a huge trade surplus vis-a-vis Turkey. I would like to see it to increase to maybe $50 billion. Maybe India
Of
can
course.
export to, you know, much more goods and services to Turkey because Turkey is the gateway to Europe. Let's not forget that. And
Yes.
also to Central Asia, right? Through Turkey, we can access the Turkic states of Central Asia as well. Many of them are very rich, like Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan. They are very, very rich, almost first world country.
Mhm.
However, because Indian state, as I said, has limited ability and quite ignorance about immediate neighborhood, so they are not able to connect to Central Asia as such. Indian state is able to connect with those areas or those regions with which the British Empire and the British Indian Empire had good relationship, or like Gulf, because remember, part of Gulf were actually administered from New Delhi, and before that from Calcutta. From
Yeah.
Suez to Singapore were actually under administrative control of the Indian sub empire or the British Indian Empire. Right. So that's why you see India has good relationship with the Gulf countries like Yemen or Dubai or Saudi, etc. But the Turkic world is India is quite dark about it. Again,
Yes, he was telling about the relation with Central Asian republics. Just continue there. We had some internet connection problems, friends. Sorry for that. Please continue.
yes. So I was saying that uh, after partition, most of the people with the Turkic heritage, the Mughal upper class aristocracy and the bureaucracy lineage, they unfortunately moved to Pakistan, both East Pakistan and West Pakistan. East Pakistan right now is Bangladesh.
Yes.
So Republic of India hasn't got many people with the memories of the Turkic legacy, the Central Asian legacy. Not just Turkic, but I would say also Tajik legacy. People who are
Yes.
coming from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. The Tajik areas are in Uzbekistan as well, and also from Iran. Because of the lack of historical knowledge, historical continuity, and the new generation of young blood which have come up online due to the new revolution of internet and communication. So yes, there is a bit of populism as far as Indian public internet sphere is concerned. But this is inevitable because you have a population which hasn't got the memory and connect with rest of Asia. If you notice, India gets very um, emotional and emotive about Pakistan and Bangladesh, but I don't personally consider Pakistan and Bangladesh to be an issue for India. I mean, geostrategically, India's real challenge is People's Republic of China, right?
Mm.
However, Indian media as well as Indian population, they would not say anything about China because they do not because the people, the popular mass does not understand China, doesn't understand Chinese language. It's a completely alien culture. The state apparatus. So because of which the state apparatus vis-a-vis China has more leverage. Populism doesn't get involved in relationship between India and China. Whereas between India and Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, because we have a common language, which is the Hindustani or what we call Hindi or Urdu, and Bengali, and also Hindi, Urdu in Bangladesh, there's a complete mutual comprehension vis-a-vis Pakistan and Bangladesh. So anyone who seems to be supporting uh, Pakistani perspective, Indian population would get very, very irate and uh, I would say the the response is less than suitable. And as a result, the state also comes under pressure, public pressure, to do something. to follow maybe a policy which is not very wise in my perspective from a state to interstate relationship as far as the condition of interstate relationship. So yeah, but it's only time and effort by which we can overcome this. So the Indian state has to grow, memories and awareness. Maybe another 50 years, a lot of things are going to change, and maybe our conversation, me representing the Indian side, you representing the Turkey side, maybe we may be one of the honest bridge builders, and relationship
Yes.
builders. And in future, we may be able to see some fruits. But again, this kind of things takes time. This doesn't happen within fortnight.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much for the answer, Luit. I think we're coming closer to the end. There are, of course, a lot of subjects, so the depth is very long to understand. So let's
Correct.
stop it today with two questions. Actually, this is the last
Mhm.
question, and then we can cover it later again. So the last
Sure.
recent situation in Israel-Iran situation, that is also, like you explained, the narrow-minded look towards the world in the angle of religions or some communal thoughts, etc., etc. So there is one part who is cheering for Israel in that thing in Israel, in India, as I see on social media, and then another part maybe because of religious affinity to Iran, but on other hand, also there are more, wise people who are telling what you are doing. At the same time, we are getting our oil and many important stuff from Iran, and we have a port over there, and Iran is very important in our strategic goal. So, what do you think? How India is managing the situation? Is it well or not?
Again, we have to see in two different perspectives. As a state perspective, that is the government of India, and the popular perspective. Uh,
Mhm.
all our viewers must know that about 5% of Indians are Shia. Okay. So about 30% of Indian Muslims would be about 15% of Indian population, out of which about 35% would be Shia. So 5% population of India is actually Shia. So they are
Mhm.
in multiple places from Jammu and Kashmir, which our viewers must be very much aware, to Lucknow, to Hyderabad. So they are spread all over, right? Uh, so we have to be concerned about our Shia citizens, their emotions vis-a-vis the Islamic Republic of Iran is concerned. Then we also have some Indians who are settled in Israel. So Israel also has direct people-to-people relationship with India. So we also
Mhm.
cannot be very biased against Israel as such. We must, however, because we have the domestic polity, or you can say Hindu-Muslim schism, yes, in among popular opinion, it's heavily biased towards Israel, and many people are like to see Iran more as an Islamic entity. So that domestic political ism or issues do reflect in the uh, Israel Iran cybersphere, shall we say. However, as far as the state is concerned, state is, uh, I would say, definitely pro-Israel right now, and it is not anti-Iran. Let's be very clear. Being pro-Israel doesn't mean anti-Iran as such. We are not. We have very limited, unfortunately, relationship with Iran as such. There are a lot of rhetorics, but we are not buying any oil from Iran. We also, our Chabahar port has also been a non-starter even after India trying to open up the trade route to Afghanistan via Chabahar. But in
Mhm.
their own wisdom, the Islamic Republic government has not allowed India's plans to fructify in last about 10, 15 years or so. So we are talking
Mhm.
about 10, 15 years of wasted time and effort.
Mhm.
So from state perspective, India hasn't really much to gain from Iran. We do not want Iran to fail. Let's be very clear about that. If a destruction of the polity of Iran would lead to destabilization in Pakistan, Pakistan's at least 30 to 35% of the population are Shia. So any destabilization of Iran is going to create issues in Pakistan, which will have its own blowback in India. Pakistan anyway has a huge economic problem. It has a huge bulge. We do not want sectarian issues and conflicts to come up in Pakistan. For the stability of Pakistan, we need the regime in Iran to stay. However, again, from realpolitik and interstate perspective, we have a lot of benefits with Israel as such, a lot of technological benefits. It is one of our main suppliers of arms and ammunitions. So yes. So currently, state is taking a slight pro-Israel stance, but again, I wouldn't say it is the anti-Iran stand as such. And we, our domestic political issues do have ramifications on the cyberspace.
Mhm. So I understand you are telling that with both nations, with Israel and Iran, you have some relations, especially with on your population side, with the exchange and with some trade. So, but you find it wrong, just like I think the same way, to cheering up for one part so emotionally is not helping India. It's actually distracting the situation. India needs to have this more neutral standing in looking towards this problem. Instead to cheering for one side, it should try to solve this issue on a diplomatical level, give efforts in
Absolutely.
that direction. Yes, I understand.
Correct.
That
That's
should
what
be
it-
also the Indian foreign policy, actually, which we know from India. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very
However,
much.
we are yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So however, we are a democracy and we have significant amount of press and freedom of speech. So expression is quite open in India. Anyone and everyone with a smartphone can express his opinions. This does not mean it's the entire polity or the political establishment is completely pro-Israel. So this should be seen in that light only.
Thank you very much, Luit. It was a nice conversation. We should continue these programs, especially about India, Turkey, the Near Asia, to learn more about this region and its geopolitics. And guys, if you like the program, please make a follow to our channel. You can also join the channel for special programs. I'm doing the channel in Turkish and in English. Maybe in future Luit can help up also doing it in Hindi and other languages. So thank you very much for following. Like it, share it, and leave your constructive criticism as a comment. If you like it also, you can share it with us. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you again, Luit, for joining my program, HRA Geopolitics.
The pleasure was all mine.